Hi, it's Titi here for My Sacred Blood. Welcome or welcome back to the only channel on YouTube that focuses exclusively on truly holistic menstrual care. If you're already watching this from the website, join the mailing list by filling out that little form below and share this video with at least one person who you feel will benefit from this content. You may or may not have noticed that last week there was no video, and that's because the video that I was going to post is a little bit trivial in comparison to what did happen last week, and that's the news concerning the FDA approval or full approval of the Pfizer BioNTech vaccine for the COVID-19 disease. A few months ago, I did a video concerning the COVID-19 vaccines as it relates to menstruation, and you can find that on YouTube. So this is going to be kind of a follow-up or an update to that video. I want to start out by giving some facts concerning the Pfizer BioNTech vaccine, because that's the only one so far that's been approved by the FDA in the United States. As far as where I am in Canada, the vaccine has not been fully approved outside of emergency use by Health Canada. That could change in the coming months or not. I'm not sure where they stand right now, but there are clinical trials still ongoing. There are also clinical trials in the US that are still underway. So let's start with the facts, and these are facts that are coming straight from the FDA website. Where did I put my phone? Because a lot of people are a little bit confused about whether or not the vaccines have been actually approved and how they work, whether the booster has been approved, and so on and so on. So I'm going to start out by providing you with the basic facts about this vaccine. On Monday, August 23rd, 2021, the United States Food and Drug Administration officially approved one of these mRNA vaccines, which was the Pfizer BioNTech vaccine. The vaccine that we know as the Pfizer BioNTech vaccine for COVID-19 has been officially approved by the FDA and has been given an official name. That name is Comirnaty, and it's approved for individuals aged 16 or older for a 2-dose series. It is approved as a vaccine to prevent COVID-19. So it does not prevent the SARS-CoV or SARS-Corona-2 virus that causes COVID-19. So SARS-CoV-2, there is no vaccine to provide immunity against that virus, as you would in the case of, for example, the virus that causes chickenpox or the HPV vaccine. Those are approved as a vaccine to treat the virus or to provide immunity against the virus. In this case, this is just approved as a treatment against the disease that is caused by the virus. And so people can still get the virus and they can still pass on the virus. The Pfizer BioNTech is still approved under emergency use authorization, and that is for people who are under the age of 16. So children and youth age 15 and younger are still able to get the vaccine, but only under emergency use authorization. So as long as the pandemic is still going and as long as there's no other approved vaccines, it can still be administered, but they have not been fully approved for people under the age of 16. Then the same goes for the booster shots. So the vaccine itself has been approved for 2-dose series. With the additional booster, the argument is being made that after several months, immunity wanes or diminishes, and so there is some talk about some people requiring a booster. And so that booster is authorized under emergency use, but the booster is not part of the fully authorized vaccine series. And the booster should be given at least 4 weeks after the second dose. So you would get your first dose, then 3 weeks later you get the second dose, and then at least 4 weeks later you may be able to take a third booster. But the representative from Pfizer in an interview with NBC did mention that they were in the process of developing a vaccine that can better treat the Delta variant of the COVID-19. Now, what are some of my concerns about these vaccines as it relates to menstruation? The problem that I found was that the issues that we were seeing with menstruation, there are over 100,000 reports of women experiencing irregular periods, heavy bleeding, and other symptoms related to menstruation after having taken the vaccine. But to date, there has been no information or that suggests that there's a causal link that suggests that the vaccine is causing the irregularities. There are different explanations for this, one of them being stress, one of them being the fact that this is a foreign element being introduced into the body, and so the body is identifying that as a foreign object and is fighting against it. Another problem with the vaccine, before I get further into menstruation, is the fact that this is an mRNA vaccine. And this is a relatively new piece of technology. It's never been used as a vaccine before, the mRNA technology. Now, with mRNA is genetic material. It's RNA. And this is a messenger RNA, and RNA, or genetic material, things that come from nature, cannot be patented. So for it to have been patented to be used as a drug or medicine, it had to have been modified in some way. And so my question would be, whose mRNA is this? Who or what did it come from? And in what way was it modified? And it's important to ask these questions because do we know whether or not maybe there's some incompatibility with some women and the genetic material that's been introduced? We know that your immunity or your immune system is directly related to your hormones. And so hormones, as we've talked about many times on My Sacred Blood, is directly related to your menstrual cycle or controls your menstrual and reproductive cycle. So we don't know how these mRNAs interfere with the hormones that regulate the menstrual cycle. And I believe it was extremely important to have asked these questions, or to at least try to figure that out. I believe that anyone who has chosen to take these vaccines thus far is making a tremendous sacrifice as far as science goes, to provide us with the data that we need to either make a decision for or against taking the vaccine. And also in testing mRNA technology, I'm not completely against it, but I am a little bit iffy when it comes to playing around with Mother Nature. And this is why you can't just take one animal from one ecosystem and introduce it into a whole new ecosystem, because you don't know how compatible it's going to be. You don't know how destructive it's going to be, so on, so on. And we don't have any long-term data to know whether or not or how these things are going to impact women's reproductive health, menstrual health, and even the reproductive health of the youth who have taken the vaccine. And we're not going to know that for how it's going to affect the lives of youth for another decade or so, when they do come of age, or when they do reach, or when their bodies start to mature. The argument for boosters is that efficacy wanes over time. And the FDA itself says that the duration of protection is currently unknown. What they do know is that a booster may be needed for some individuals after 4 weeks. Some say up to 8 months. It would provide some degree of immunity. So the fact that efficacy wanes after a certain time would suggest that it's not as effective after a certain time, after less than a year. So it's effective for, as far as the FDA is concerned, unknown amount of time. All right, so I'm going to go to an article that was posted on kpbs.org titled "Why Reports of Menstrual Changes After COVID-19 Are Tough to Study." And in this article, they do mention that over 100,000 women have made the complaint or have made reports of having irregular periods. The number was 140,000 reports actually, of people who say they've noticed a change in their periods after vaccination. And so once again, some have reported heavy periods, irregular periods, either missing periods or lighter periods than usual. And so a lot of these reports obviously are anecdotal, and so they can't really figure out if these are related directly to the vaccine. Another reason why they say they are not able to figure this out is because it's hard to look at periods and to understand periods in general. There hasn't been much research done in the way of the menstrual cycle. We didn't take the time, and I say we loosely, I'm referring to scientists and those in the medical field, didn't really take the time to understand menstruation. As soon as we understand something about how hormones affected menstruation, the first thing that we decided to do was figure out how to make it a disease so it can be medicated and controlled. And so I think that worked as a disadvantage to women, because now we're stuck not knowing about our period, much less understanding how it interacts with certain drugs and medications. So it was a disadvantage to just, learn about the menstrual period and automatically the next thing that happened was man made a pill to cure menstruation, considering it as a disease. And so here we are, not knowing, first of all, what is a regular menstrual cycle, because a lot of women who take the pill and take hormonal birth controls don't really have a regular cycle. The cycle can't be regular because it's already been affected by the previous medication, by the birth controls and hormonal contraceptives and so on, whatever. We're stuck in a situation now where even if there are reports of irregular periods, there's no real way of knowing whether or not these irregular periods are caused by the birth controls or by something in the environment, something in the woman's life, maybe stress, hormonal changes in general, or by the vaccine. So it's always going to be inconclusive. In addition to that, they claim that none of the clinical trials included questions related to menstruation. They didn't ask questions about menstruation or about the women's periods before, and they didn't follow up with questions, obviously, after they had taken the medication. It wasn't something that was taken into consideration. So what's important is that obstetricians and gynecologists or OBGYNs do talk with their female patients about the effects that this drug might have on their menstruation. If you decide to take one of these vaccines, it would be best to speak with your healthcare practitioner, with your gynecologist, someone who knows you and understands your body and can advise you of the risks and the benefits, or whether the benefits really do outweigh the risks in your particular case. Like, for example, if you have concerns about whether or not this could affect your reproductive cycle or menstruation, you should get the drug administered by your gynecologist or by a health practitioner rather than going to a mass vaccination clinic, for example. Now, the reason I'm making this follow-up and why I thought it was important to mention this topic again is because of the lack of research and the lack of study and the lack of data around how these vaccines may affect reproduction in the future, the reproductive health of the younger population and the reproductive health of the current population, the older population, I should say. And it's important to discuss it because reproduction is, of course, the single most important part of our existence. If you don't reproduce, you don't survive as a species. And so this should not have been something that was taken lightly. There should have been more data around this before it was approved. And the fact that it was approved not knowing the risks or not even being able to identify that this was one of the possible side effects, I think was a mistake of epic proportions, and that's to say the least. We do know that there have been drugs that were approved by the FDA that were taken by pregnant women, thalidomide, and there was another one, bendectin, that was approved, and a lot of women used that during their pregnancy to help with nausea, with morning sickness. And then it turned out that those drugs led to very serious congenital birth defects And so it's always important to take time. And so I was a little concerned when I saw that it was approved so soon. I don't know what the criteria was for deciding that it was effective, if they're also claiming that the efficacy wanes. Maybe effective means effective for a certain amount of time, and I don't know what they mean by safe. Safe could also mean safe for now. And so just the lack of data was very, very worrisome. As far as this PBS article is concerned and what it looks like, as far as the FDA is concerned, they have no data to say whether or not it's related to menstruation. I really honestly don't even think that we're going to get a definitive answer as far as how these drugs affect the menstrual cycle and how they affect the reproductive cycle. I think that's something that time will have to tell. And so that is it really for this one. I hope that helps you to understand a little more about the facts related to the vaccine and about the full approval from the FDA. And at the very least, I hope it did give you something to think about. I am going to leave it there. And so until the next one, take care of yourself.